This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Good evening everyone and welcome to Southern Cross News. Sweeping reforms could be coming to Tasmania, with historic legislation giving more rights to transgender people passing its first hurdle in Parliament late last night. But it was not just the laws making waves. Rebel Speaker Sue Hickey using her voting powers to undermine the government.
Cheers erupt on the floor of Parliament. Labor and the Greens passing a suite of transgender reforms. Today, advocates celebrated.
Transgender people, above all people, know that gender is something that you feel inside, and you know what it is from a very, very young age.
The laws mean gender could become optional on birth certificates and make it easier for adults to legally change their gender.
The amendments that were passed last night were extremely simple administrative changes that will improve the lives of transgender and gender diverse Tasmanians, and they'll have zero effect on the rest of Tasmania.
The opposition accused of not consulting the changes, a claim they rejected.
We consulted with the former Anti-Discrimination Commissioner, Transgender and Intersex Tasmanians, and indeed we consulted more on our amendments than the Attorney-General did on the original bill.
I think Tasmanian parents will be disgusted that the Labor and Greens parties are doing social experiments on their kids and taking their sex off their birth certificates.
The Prime Minister tweeting the changes were ridiculous and should be outlawed by the Federal Labor Party.
Women's safe spaces are a real concern. They're going to be jeopardised by these sort of laws when a man can basically say legally, I'm actually a woman now. So it's much broader than just the transgender community.
It allows people's genders to be recognised. People, scaremongering and saying this is erasing gender. It doesn't erase gender at all.
But it was ultimately Speaker Sue Hickey who voted to allow many of the amendments to pass through the House. She holds the deciding vote and on 11 occasions voted against her own party to support the changes.
Every person should look at their politician and just see, whether they've got the courage of their convictions or whether they should be voting as a rubber stamp. And I'm not one of those type of politicians.
Despite the Speaker's voting, the government insists it still rules in majority, but it's sure to be causing tension within the party ranks.
I've had a couple of good meetings this morning. Everything's just as it should be.
Has the Premier talked to you at all?
Not today, no, but he's a very busy man.
The amendments still have to pass the upper house before they become law. Michelle Wisby, Southern Cross News.
Tasmanian authorities are trialling a new tool in the effort to prevent family violence incidents. Project Vigilance will see high-risk offenders fitted with ankle bracelet trackers, which alert police if they go near their victim.
Police testing an ankle bracelet to be fitted to family violence offenders as part of the tech trial.
Look, it probably won't be for everybody. We're focusing on those priority family violence offenders, which we consider to be the most serious. Once the trials probably run in the next 18 months and we get good evidence-based data back, we certainly will intend to extend it. 3
people are already being monitored using the system. The bands include strips of stainless steel and a tamper alarm. The tracking device sends a GPS signal to authorities and alerts them if they breach certain boundaries. In some cases, victims can also choose to carry a discreet duress device.
If there is a breach, so they enter close to an exclusion zone or a particular breach of their actual police family or the family violence order that they're under, the buddy will alert Tasmania Police directly and we'll be able to then access the system and monitor their movements and provide the response.
A tool needed for police as they focus on family violence, with rising numbers of reports, more than 3,000 in the last financial year.
Violence against anyone at all is completely unacceptable in any form, but the impact of family violence is particularly devastating and it damages the physical and mental health of the people who experience it.
The trial runs for 2 years. Michael Breen, Southern Cross News.
And a reminder, domestic and family violence counselling is available 24 hours a day on 1800 RESPECT or call 000 if you're in danger. Tasmanian allied health professionals have joined the fight for increased pay and better conditions. As industrial action ramps up across the state, workers say their frustration stems from being forced to prioritise the care of already vulnerable patients.
members are reporting to us that the amount of patients, clients that they're unable to see is well in excess of 50 on a week-to-week basis, and we're going to start releasing these figures.
Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to see all these people in a timely manner, and some of them are ending up in emergency. It's not good enough.
The government says it is acting to recruit more staff and reduce surgery waiting lists. A murder trial has been delayed a day after a power outage in the Launceston Supreme Court. The jury had been expecting to hear opening statements in the trial of Belinda Leonie Colburn. She's pleaded not guilty to the murder of Aaron Matthew Monaco in November of 2016. The trial was adjourned until tomorrow morning. Tasmania police are still searching for a brazen armed robber who held up a Sheffield store at gunpoint. An undisclosed amount of cash was taken from Moochoo last month after this man entered the store brandishing a silver pistol. Police have since recovered the offender's car. However, the man and weapon have not yet been located. Anyone with information is urged to contact Crime Stoppers. Tasmanian forecasters are keeping a close eye on a weather system developing off our northeast coast tonight. The area of deep low pressure is set to bring heavy rainfalls and strong winds over Thursday and Friday. But the Bureau of Meteorology says because it's a dynamic weather event, there's a high degree of uncertainty about the extent of rainfalls.
With systems that involve a low pressure system, particularly to the east of Tasmania, they are often quite dynamic and they will often change from run to run and day to day, so they're quite hard to predict.
Tasmanians are being urged to prepare for the conditions and keep an eye on the Bureau's warnings. The Bridgewater Bridge is joining the likes of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, today recognised with an Engineering Heritage National Marker. The causeway was constructed by convicts in 1830 and the bridge structure has been rebuilt 4 times.
Engineers do a lot for the community, and back in the early days it was even harder. So the knowledge wasn't necessarily as mature and everything was more difficult in a new colony.
The current bridge was completed more than 70 years ago. The State Growth Department says it's progressing plans for a replacement bridge. The home of Australia's most versatile thoroughbred in racing history is now up for sale, with Calstock House officially on the market. Melbourne Cup winning horse Malua was bred at the homestead in 1879. But the heritage stables aren't the only reason buyers from across the globe will be interested.
It's as rich in history as it is in charm. This is Calstock House, one of northern Tasmania's oldest homes.
Arguably the best example in Tasmania of colonial Georgian architecture.
Built by convicts in 1831, it stood the test of time and was once the only property on the hill, with the closest neighbour 20 kilometres away in Westbury.
It's in amazing original condition. Still, we're standing by the original barracks that have been converted into heritage accommodation.
This 30-acre property still has the original front door lock, servant service bells, porthole windows in the wool shed, and these shutters that were used to keep bushrangers out. It's also hard to ignore these stables, oozing in racing history and once home to Melbourne Cup royalty.
Malua was here, and I think her brother, Anchor Sheet, were also part of the Calstock history.
Malua took out the Melbourne Cup in 1884 and the Australian Cup 2 years later. He's since been inducted into the Australian Racing Hall of Fame, a proud Tasmanian legacy that could be repeated.
I think it'd be wonderful if it was. I mean, you know, everything's there ready for it to go.
The owners are downsizing and moving closer to family, leaving the keys up for grabs. So if you can see yourself as the king or even queen of this castle, it won't come cheap, with offers of over $3.5 million expected to come in from the mainland and international buyers. Jessica Moran, Southern Cross News.
Back home again, and Launceston basketballer Josh Cleary remains confident he'll once again represent Australia at next year's Golden Games. The Games are the world's largest competition for athletes with an intellectual impairment, and while the 29-year-old admits age is creeping up on him, it's certainly not affecting his hours on the court.
With age catching up on him, Josh Cleary is taking one final shot at the dream.
My biggest goal and probably my last chance to play for Australia, because I'm just getting to that age bracket now.
That goal is the Global Games in Brisbane next year, described as the Commonwealth Games for athletes with an intellectual impairment. 12 years after he first ventured onto the court, the 29-year-old is still training 16 hours a week.
For me, because I'm the oldest person in the squad now by about 3 or 4 years, I'm more older than everyone, I've got to stay fit and stay healthy. For me, that's the biggest thing.
Cleary already captains Tasmania's Ivor Burge basketball team of players with an intellectual disability. The 6'4" forward has played the Global Games before, but the 2015 Ecuador Games faced major disruption from volcanic activity. As he plays out the last quarter of his career, Cleary is just grateful for how the game has improved life with Asperger's syndrome.
But basketball's changed my life. It's brought me out of my comfort zone and helped me to develop skills I wouldn't normally.
Sean McComish, Southern Cross News.
A group of very passionate Grade 2 students has gone above and beyond, raising more than $2,500 for the Tasmanian Devil appeal. Students at East Launceston Primary baked over 1,000 cupcakes for the cause, which they even wrote a song about.
Help us save the devils before it's too late. Help us save the devils, they're the symbol of our state.
The devil's so important to Tasmania because without it there's nothing for the Tasmania to stand for.
The money will go towards vaccinations to protect the Tassie icon from devil facial tumour disease. Now let's take a look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to TasPlan, your local super fund. A late rally from banking and healthcare helped lift the Australian share market off a near 2-year low. But commodity-related stocks and tech shares weighed heavily. The ASX 200 index fell 29 points. A short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 72.29 US cents and 56.5 British pence.
After a few lean years, Tasmania is expected to produce a bumper crop of AFL draftees tomorrow night. Chase Jones and Taryn Thomas are tipped to go early, while more locals are well in the running. He's lit up Launceston and the Allies. Now midfielder Chase Jones is on the verge of being a first-round pick for an AFL club. Talent manager and former player Matt Armstrong says Jones brings both character and skills to the table.
He's a bloke that has the ability to play 200 games at AFL level and probably be a leader in the leadership group at an AFL club early on in his career.
Armstrong considers Jones to be a top 10 pick, something Tasmania hasn't had in the draft since 2013, when Gold Coast snapped up Cade Kolodjasny. North Launceston gun Taryn Thomas is also around that mark.
I still think Taryn, believe it or not, he can improve another 20-30% yet. Once they get his body strong enough to, last at AFL season year in, year out.
Armstrong says Clarence's Fraser Turner will go in the 40s, while roughies like Lauderdale's Nick Baker are still in with a shot, although the sheer quality of this year's talent pool could close the door early. Those who do make it will jump very quickly from life at home to the AFL world.
Most of them will be picked up Thursday, Friday and be on a plane on Monday to their AFL clubs. Most clubs will come down and visit them over the weekend with the family if they get picked up, and then off they go. They're straight into it.
For the first time in 20 years, Tasmania will send teams to volleyball's national championships. Stepping up to the competition is being hailed a major milestone for a sport pushing to lift its profile. It's high intensity, where players leap like they're touching the sky. And now our very best volleyballers have a national platform to play on, with Tasmanian teams landing a spot at the sport's national championships.
To have a Tasmanian team is something we've been working on for a long time. It's really exciting.
It will be the first time Tasmania has had a place on the court since the Australian Volleyball League launched in 1998. It's the result of a dogged sponsorship and recruitment drive spearheaded by men's team captain Josh Thorpe, himself a former player in the pro-European leagues who now wants to see the sport's grassroots grow.
This league gives them a real high level of volleyball to see and to aim for.
Tasmania will send a men's and women's team to the tournament, which is being held in Melbourne in early December. It's a proving ground for the state side, which wants to become a permanent face in the National League from next year.
It's been non-stop for the last 3 months for every single person of the team.
They want the challenge of playing against the best Australia has to offer and the other states.
If all goes to plan, the exposure will encourage more juniors to soar.
It's an amazing mix of brute power, precision, and ultimate teamwork.
He's been burning up Formula Renault circuits around the world. Now Alex Peroni is stepping up a gear. The Tasmanian is testing out a new, more powerful class, which runs on the same day as Formula One. After 2 consistent years in Formula Renault, there's a new beast calling Alex Peroni's name. Formula 3, which is 2 steps below Formula 1 and a class above what he's used to.
It's a totally new car, twice the horsepower of what I've been racing this year, twice the downforce and a lot quicker over a lap.
Peroni will travel to Abu Dhabi next week to test run the Formula 3 for a Spanish team. If successful, he will open the door to racing in the class next season. And that would be a major step towards reaching F1, as the 2 championships run side by side.
Racing on the same weekend as Formula 1, so all the teams see how well you do.
Locking in next week's test run needed big sponsorship dollars. Luckily for the young speedster, long-term backer Launceston is bankrolling the opportunity. Although money is essential to any rising motorsport star, Peroni knows his job happens on the track.
I focus on what I have to do, and that's drive, and that's the only thing I can, change. So I focus on just getting the best results every weekend, and luckily I have a great team behind me.
And when he's bringing home trophies like this one from his famous win in Monaco earlier this year, clearly the team's doing things right. Was that the highlight of 2018 for you?
Yeah, for sure. Probably the highlight of my career.
17 degrees today in Hobart. Launceston had a top of 22, 21 for Burnie with 19 at Devonport. 25 was the state's top today at St Helens and Fingal, 23 degrees for Cressy. Scottsdale, Sheffield, Wynyard and Bushy Park all 21, 19 for Smithton with 17 for Strawn and also on King Island. Looking on your charts, mid-cloud clearing the state by this afternoon. Further out shows mid-level cloud extending from the Territory through the eastern states. A low lies south of Kangaroo Island and moves east with multiple bands rotating around the low and crossing South Australia and Victoria. Tomorrow, a complex low is situated over southeastern states, including Tasmania. A trough lingers through the north and the west, and a high develops over South Australia and WA. Southwest to southeasterly winds 15 to 25 knots, reaching 30 about the west early and increasing through the northwest later on, with seas up to 3 metres. And there is a gale warning for northwestern waters and also a strong wind warning for remaining coastal waters. Rain through the south, 15 in Hobart and Cygnet, 16 for New Norfolk, 16 in rain in Launceston and Devonport, 15 for Campbelltown, 16 in rain also in Burnie and Strawn, 15 for Smithton, and heavy rain throughout the east, 15 in St Helens, 16 for Swansea, Fingal a top of 14. And the UV remains very high right around Tasmania. Rain expected at times for most centres on Friday, heavier throughout the east, showers through the east and the south on Saturday, cloudy conditions for other centres with much the same expected again on Sunday. Looking around Australia tomorrow, 29 degrees and stormy conditions for Perth and also Brisbane, 18 in showers for Adelaide, 16 in Melbourne, 25 degrees in Sydney, sunny for Cairns 34. And cloudy in Hobart at the moment, 14 degrees, sunny in Launceston and Devonport, 17 degrees. Looks like the unpredictable spring conditions continue over the next few days, Jo. Back to you.
Very unpredictable indeed. Thank you very much for that, Sam. That's all from the team for now. Have a lovely evening. We'll see you a little later with updates.